I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, you funny little alien, you. And thank you, listener, not so funny alien, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles of James Tyson. It's me, James, and today I am bringing on a friend of mine, Mr. Jim Malliard. Now, Jim has had a podcast for a number of years now. You can find him, any of the Malliard reports out floating in the Google net, and go to his website, Malliard.com. That's Malliard, not Malliard like the duck, even though if you put Malliard in, Malliard Report, you will get his podcast. It's wherever a podcast can be had. So it's just out there. Interestingly enough, he started off in paranormal podcasting back before it was trendy. And it was as a result of being on a paranormal team back around 2008 to about 2016. They were quite busy in his area of Pennsylvania, bouncing around. And we talked to him a bit about that and how he got interested in actually moving into the podcast and talking to people about supernatural things and paranormal and what his interest was. He's expanded that podcast. He's actually been around again for a while now, and he talks to people that not everyone does. And he actually brings in a lot of, kind of headline, not quite headline news. I shouldn't have used that word, but, more current events and little things that are a little bit way out there. He's talked to authors like Jim Malliard. And actually, we talked about this. He's had Roger Stone on for 4 interviews. Roger Stone. So you can see how it's a little bit eclectic. He does get into conspiracies. We touch on it briefly, but you know me and conspiracies. Yeah, I'm not big into that. I guess I have my own opinion on those. And we talk about that, what that is too, because it's my show. We do talk about ghosts. We talk about interviews that we've had in the past and who we've had them with. Again, he was on a paranormal team called the Midville Paranormal Investigative Team. It's still around. You can still probably find their website. And if you have any questions for the paranormal team, they probably will ask you, you answer them, but I would get a hold of Jim Malliard first. Again, the Malliard Report, you can find it anywhere a podcast may be had, but I would just go to Malliard.com and you'll track that down. Again, we talk a little bit about his experience out of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and bumping into a ghost, and we bounce some ghost stories back and forth off each other. And we get into, again, conspiracies. We don't actually get into ufology, which is a shame because he's talked to a lot of good UFO authors. Again, he's a podcast host. He's a paranormal podcast host. He's a little bit more than just paranormal and supernatural, but he expands. Again, if you're going to talk about conspiracies and things, why not get into current events too? So I'm going to go get them. You guys wait here. Jim will be right in. Hello, Jim. How are you today?
I am pretty good. How are you?
I am well here on the Pacific Northwest or Southwest, depending on which part of the planet you're beaming in from. Whereabouts are you?
Well, I'm from Western Pennsylvania, so you'd be north, whatever direction that is, west.
North left.
Yeah.
More from a north left.
Way over.
How far are you from Harrisburg?
I'm probably 4.5, 5 hours from there. So
crap. Okay. Yeah, I've been to Gettysburg. Like I flew into Harrisburg, went down to Gettysburg, and
I've been there. It's a great place. I mean, that's actually, it's funny. You're probably going to ask where this all started, and we'll get back to Gettysburg here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I did a paranormal conference there years ago, and it was kind of funky. Got into some trouble, but we're here to talk about your trouble, young man. Now,
I was going to say you got in trouble. Hold on. It's
hold on.
Oh yeah, about that time.
Yeah, I'll tell you about mine. I got in trouble with the paranormal team there for asking why they didn't cross people over. They all looked at me and went, and then everybody else who paid for the tour is going, yeah, how come you don't cross her over if her husband who killed her is still here? And they just froze and went, because we charge people to come here and talk.
As I say, that's bad for business. I mean, that's why they don't do it. I can answer that question right now.
Yeah. And then, yeah. So it kind of, like,
I mean, it has nothing to do with being good people. It has more to do with good business.
Yeah.
Which there's a fine line in there somewhere, but we can. Now,
you still part of your paranormal team, or that was like from 08 to 16? You had about 8 years in it?
Yeah. Well, we still have a team, but it's not as nearly active as it was. I mean, 16 was probably the last. Well, I guess we've consulted with some people since then. I don't know if we've actually been anywhere as a group.
And that's the Meadville Paranormal Investigative Team.
Yeah. So, it's kind of, I don't want to say it ran its course, but I mean, families have grown since then and all this other stuff, and the number of cases and number of people calling us has decreased too, which might be part and parcel of our philosophy to ask too many questions and not necessarily give the answers people are looking for. So there's that too.
Yeah. So what got you into that? Going back, like bouncing you back.
Okay, well, let's go back. Let's see. So this would be 2007. We went to Gettysburg for part of our quote unquote honeymoon. We decided that's what we were going to do. And so we took our young son, probably 8 months, I think it was, somewhere in there, very young. And we went to this haunted cellar, and the storyteller was down there telling these stories, and he was just babbling off at something, and we couldn't quite figure it out because he wouldn't do that at home. Like, he'd just babble a little bit and then stop and then be a little bit. But for some reason this night he was just going and going and going. And of course, the storyteller has a great story about a child who ran out of this hotel and got hit by a horse and carriage after the war, of course, because it wouldn't happen during the war. And he says, so sometimes the spirit of the child connects with children and entertains them and all this other stuff. And they've got all these, there's this big display of toys that people leave for this child ghost and all, he's a storyteller. Notice I'm telling you that more than once. I mean, obviously I paid for him to tell me stories. So of course, me being an objective human being thinks that's what he's doing. But it sticks with me because I haven't seen this behavior before. And then we go out on a ghost walk, and it kind of, it's kind of spooky, but all that other stuff's kind of rattling through my head. Next day, we wake up and go out to the battlefield. We're on top of Devil's Den, which is a great place. If you've never been, you need to go. And I see a reenactor across the way. We're up on top of the rocks. And I see a reenactor, and I'm like, oh, Gettysburg, ultimate moment. I mean, I don't know if this guy's a professional reenactor or just some weekend guy out there with an outfit on, but either way, this is the moment that I need to encapsulate this trip with, because these pictures of these rocks are great, but doesn't really say Gettysburg, so to speak, in my book. So I pursue to chase this man down, and I get over to where he was, and I can't find him. So I head down the hill on the road, and there's a parking area where everybody parks because it's kind of how the state park or the national park has it. It's one way in and one way out. And I get down to the cars, and I'm like, there's a guy sitting. I'm like, hey, were you just dressed? And he's like looking at me like I'm totally insane. So I know it wasn't him, obviously. So I ask a few more people, and this little old lady looks at me square in the eye and says, are you sure you didn't see a ghost? And she's like, because I haven't seen any reenactors all day, like anywhere around here. She's like, I've been here for a couple hours. I've just been, and I'm like, no, I seen him. I seen him. And she's like, I didn't see him. I've been sitting here all day. And I'm like, she's like, are you sure you didn't see a ghost? And she said it, when she said it the second time, I went, okay. So I proceeded to walk away from this lady because I thought she was crazy, and go back up around and, proceed to have these moments. And then it just sat with me for a while, right? And it's just like, did I really see this, like I said, this looked like a full-blown guy in the middle of the afternoon who I wanted to go get a picture taken with because it was the right, because normally you hear about these misty figures and all these other things, but this looked right.
Was he kind of dressed raggedy?
No, that's why, again, like I said, I was for sure he was a reenactor because it looked sharp. Like,
uniform?
I don't want to say, Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
like
okay.
overly, like overly reenactor, right? Like he just
Yeah.
went to the shop that morning and bought it and had to come out and take some pictures. Like I was, like so. Yeah, it didn't look like he had been in the battle or anything. It looked like he was a reenactor, so that's
Now,
why I presume.
sorry, Confederate
Uh,
or Union?
I think Union, but I just kind of again one of those details. I mean, I remember seeing it, but I don't remember seeing it in color. Even like it just
That's cool.
was there. Like that was not. You mentioned that, and I'm like, I had to pause because I'm like, I don't remember because it was just that so clear, but it wasn't in color, which made now that I'm thinking about it's even more weird because it would be like that time lapse of how you see, like you think black and white when you think Civil War.
Yeah. What's interesting, the area you were in, the most common dead guy that's seen there is the commander of the Texas Volunteers. And he has actually been known. There was a kid there, a mid-teens kid walking around with a shirt that had like Texas on it. And this guy walked up to him around the corner and looked at his shirt and said, Texas, and smiled and walked, and it literally disappeared.
So
but he's kind of dressed really raggedy and has bare feet because they didn't really they were pretty run down by the time they got there. But,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. This guy, if I was going to rate him from reenactor to actually in the battle, it was 9 out of 10 reenactor. Like,
perfect.
It didn't look like it looked, I don't want to say pressed, but it looked clean and pristine and like new. Like, it was weird.
Have you ever talked to any of the people that work at Gettysburg about reenactors?
I have talked to some reenactors, and when I tell them this, anytime that I say clean, they always laugh because, well, anybody that's been out camping or doing anything outside knows that, clean and anything outside just doesn't stay that way for more than, I know how I get a new shirt and go out to eat the first time. I might as well, it just doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I interviewed a guy in and this is a guy I want you should interview. I'm going to dig around after we talk and find him. He was an employee of Gettysburg, one of the guides there for years, and he retired. And one of the cool things he did is people would come to him and say, hey, I got a picture of those really cool reenactors who just were walking out there. And he'd look at them and say, yeah, we don't have reenactors. And they go,
because this was
what? So he got all these pictures, and he's got them. He's got a shop in downtown Gettysburg where he has all these photos on the wall, and there's like, here's mom, dad, grandma, and two guys in uniform.
Oh, that's cool.
And he's collected them all, and I think he's written a couple of books on them. And when we're done this, I'll get that information to you. And if you look him up, he's a really interesting guy to talk to, especially because you've had your experience there, because he will tell you about everybody else who had the same experience in that location.
And here's the fun thing. So years later, we went back as the paranormal team, right? And down in the bottom is that little creek that runs through that, ran red for days afterwards and all this other stuff. And so I'm standing down there with one of my team members, and I said, because we had been, we dug all this history out about how the guy that was paid to bury the bodies in that area was just jamming them in the rocks instead of burying them properly. And I, Infinite Wisdom moment, said, can you imagine that smell? This is the greatest tell of history of man, what that smell must have been like at that point, right? Because if you were doing your job, it wouldn't nearly be as bad. And she looks at me and she says, what'd you say? I said, that smell must have been horrible. And in that moment, I felt the breeze kick up, and I had the worst smell of my life. Hit me for about 30, 45 seconds. I've smelled raw sewage. I've done there's been some really crappy places I've been. And this smell, I almost legitimately lost my lunch. I turned colors, and so did the team member I was with. And then another one approached us and said, what is wrong with you two? And it was gone.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you something from my police background is once you smell a dead human being, it clicks something primal in us. And I think it's a primal warning system that if you're going to go around a corner and just before you go around the corner, you smell it, your brain says one of your own kind has been killed and is around the corner. You think you really want to go there. And that smell you will never smell anything like it again until you smell another dead human.
Yeah,
And
I know.
it'll click back on you. It's the
No.
most bizarre smell. We carry those little Vicks vapor rub things in our briefcases. You go to a place where the body's been laying for a while, and that's your Vicks vapor rub up the nose. And
I believe it because, like I said, this was just
you actually taste the smell.
Yeah.
No,
but I don't know where it came from. I mean, we're standing down there by a creek, and it was there and gone, which is just.
It was gifted to you.
Yeah, gifted.
The thing
what kind of gift I have, right?
I didn't have a paranormal experience other than I was standing with a person who she came down from New York because I used to have that live internet radio show with Dave Scott years ago, and she was a fan from New York, and she went down to the Gettysburg conference, ghost conference, and we were standing. It was a Sunday, and we were standing on a part of the battlefield, and we heard the reports of 2 cannon. And I was like, what? Did you heard that, right? And she goes, yeah. And I said, that was an old cannon. Because we used to have them in our drill square when I was in training. We had these 2 6-pounders we had that would always go out, the ceremonial thing. And you could really tell the report of that, a smaller cannon. So I asked one of the guides, I said, you guys have cannons around? He goes, no, did you hear them too? Oh, yeah. But every so often, yeah, it's like a residual. And I guess it's the same thing from like the battlegrounds in Belgium from the First World War.
I've always wondered, but I've never
residual sound. Yeah.
You know, I've often, you know, I after being to Gettysburg these couple of times, I've often wondered about the beaches at Normandy and places that.
Well, I have talked to people about the fields, the farmers' fields in Belgium, where farmers for the last 114 years or whatever, 100 years, they've seen not full waves of soldiers coming up out of the ground, but sporadic, but all coming up and then walking forward and disappearing. And that's just common. They've seen it. And some people I've interviewed who are psychic, the woo-woo people, say that, you know, out of maybe 500 people coming up out of the trenches and moving, only a few of them were empathic or higher vibration or intuitive. Adding that with adrenaline and this total fear, actually they imprint. So maybe 1 out of 10 guys would actually imprint on time. They may have survived that day and lived and died of old age back home, or they may have died 20 feet into the coming up. But at that point, they were so terrified and their vibration was so high, they imprinted, and that's the loop. And I guess there's a guy at Gettysburg like that. They've got him on film running from one tree to another, but he's on a loop. So
as I said, it makes sense. I mean, there's only so many moments in life that you have that high fear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But the farmers in Belgium, I go, oh yeah, we get used to that. Dude, no. I'm good. I think I'll stay here. You guys go grow Brussels sprouts.
I'm not sure I'd ever get comfortable with it.
So, and that was your kind of like, what the heck moment in the paranormal, I guess. Yeah.
That's what kind of started it. And then, so I get home and start asking people about, you know, or telling people the story and asking if they, you know, kind of going back and forth with some of those things. And, more often than not, I found people that have had something weird happen. So I'm like, yeah. And then one of my friends said, hey, I've got something weird happening at our house. And I'm like, okay, let's go check it out. And, well, a couple weeks later, we start the team and we're off and running.
Well, yeah, you live in a part of North America that it literally goes back to the 1500s of Europeans. Yeah. And then there's the First Nations side of things for a couple of thousand years.
Yeah, it's an interesting area for sure. Deep dive, and also up the road from me is where oil was quote unquote discovered. I know it's been around for thousands of years, but you know, the first commercial wells and all this. So at one point, this was up the road more so than me, but even here, I mean, the urban sprawl of all of that was horrendous. But I mean, there was money here at one time. Yep. So there's a lot of energy that was here, especially right after the Civil War and all that other stuff. I mean, if you believe the rumors that John Wilkes Booth threatened to kill the president in town here. So the first time.
Yeah.
Of course,
You know,
nobody in town believes that. I mean, everybody denies it except everybody, from around the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big proponent of the John Wilkes Booth never got arrested, caught thing, where he was, he died in the barn fire, but it was just remains.
Well, it all seems it seems a bit much, doesn't it? Like, really? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it makes a good end to the story, but is it really the end of the story?
Yeah. If you're a guy who's got the file back in the day to go catch this guy and arrest him, he's okay. File concluded. Let's move on to the next thing. Yeah.
Well, did those guys get paid out the reward too? I mean, it was not much. I mean, it seems pennies today, but I mean, it was a lot of money back then. So, I mean, the incentive for them to say we got them.
Yep.
I mean, didn't outlay the incentive to keep looking. No.
It's interesting how nowadays, and specifically in the last few years, where we've got these reality TV shows that go out, searching for Civil War gold and flipping rocks over, literally, and like up in Canada here, we have the Oak Island thing.
Oh, Oak Island. I've got to mention this since you're right here, and I do appreciate the shows. If you've ever watched Oak Island, get the aerial shot of the island, right? Yep. Picture it in your what it look like.
Yep. Yep.
Looks like a duck.
Looks like a what? A duck?
Looks like a duck. A duck. Because you were mentioning Malliard earlier. I had Robert Butler on my show, the narrator of that show, and I said to him, I've got the secret for you. Take it back to the boys. I said, the island looks like a duck, and I know the secret. And of course, I haven't heard anything from them yet, but I figured I just have to. It was a great line, but
because the narrator works in an office in California.
Oh yeah, he doesn't talk to them ever, but it was just a great moment in the fun part of it, because I spent more time talking to him about doing the narrating and the office stuff and the back end stuff than either of the Ancient Alien shows or Oak Island. And I looked at the time and I went, oh God, I've got to mention that stuff so I can put in the show notes that we talked about it. No.
I had a conversation with him at a UFO conference in the International UFO Congress or something out in Phoenix a couple of years ago. And he's actually kind of interesting guy, but again, he is the guy who reads a script.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So he doesn't know. But I mean, besides what hasn't aired yet, I mean, there's always those good teasers, but he's not because he likes his job.
If you read a script, if you read the scripts for the shows that you're doing, you're actually learning about what they're doing. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
But you get little events noticed, but you don't actually get boots on the ground.
What they're doing is they're changing Canadian history. They're actually creating new paragraphs because they're working with a lot of universities from up in that part of the country, and they're the scientists, and they're like flipping things over, going, "Oh yeah, this is new. We didn't know that before. We didn't have this before." So I like that because it's changing history. And again, in your area where you've got, you had the French and the British and the Americans, and, you can go back a few nice centuries of a lot of different people moving in and out of that area, and then settling with, like you say, the oil industry and creating, a community and a city and shipping and out of that and moving on. Yeah. And so there's lots of old stuff going on. And of course, it's on top of any successful city, there's going to be an underbelly of really cranky stuff. You're going to have brothels and murders and gangsters and slaves,
all the fun stuff that would make a great backstory for any of these. I mean, it's, you think about these, you're thinking about ghost shows, you go through and all these places. I mean, there's places, the top places with horrible, well, not necessarily horrible history, but history that would be great on television, reality TV.
Oh yeah.
Is that Sarah from the brothel? No.
Yeah. I was in Folsom. It was Folsom, California, and they've got a pub there. It was the American Legion kind of thing. But it goes back to the 1800s. And there was a lady who she was a working girl. She worked above the saloon part, and she fell down the stairs and died. And she is still there. And it's the creepiest thing. She'll put her hand on your back. Brothels are always a cool place to go into, to a point. There's some real sad sad ones, and you can feel that when you go in. When you guys were doing paranormal investigations, which one really stood out as being different? Can you recall one that was just completely, yes, it was active. Yes, there's something there, but it's completely different from what you'd anticipate.
Well, most of our cases were private homes, so that's kind of hard to pin out and tell you about. But there was, well, I guess it was on TV, so I guess I can talk about it. And plus, it doesn't exist anymore; it burnt down. So, I guess that clears me from any
liability.
But I might have any
other than you left a candle there when you left. But
no, it burned down years after I was there. But it was the Riverside Inn in Cambridge Springs, Pennsylvania. I think it was what's the cop show with the detective and the medium, Amy Allen. You know
Amy, yeah. The only paranormal show that I watched, The Dead Files.
Yeah, they were there. So we were there years ago before they were there, and that place. I mean, it was just an old place first and foremost. So you go in these places and they always have that different feel, right? Because I mean, they kept the Victorian 1880s approach to how they did business and how they set the tables and all this other stuff. So obviously your mind goes back in time. So there's that meld of stuff going on, but then you just feel it. Like, because some places you go in, like antique shops, they don't feel this, but you feel this energy, this warmth and all this other stuff. And then in the middle of the night, you'll hear a couple clangs on some glassware, ting, ting, ting. And you go, yep, there's something here, just enough, like I said, 3 little tangs on a glass because you're sitting down by the one little bar they have in a breezeway, and you're sitting there going, man, this is a great place, and I love it, and it's a cool place to be, but man, it just kind of leaves you ting, 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 and you go, well, I guess we're here for another couple hours.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave. What did you find as a paranormal investigator? Did you find you got more evidence, audio or photography, photo?
Well, here's the fun thing for you. I have never heard an EVP in my life.
Shut the front door.
Just because of how I don't hear that frequency right. So, no, I haven't. So, to answer your question, I've seen blips of things that make me question on film and camera, but I have never said that's what I'm thinking it is. I've always come back with more questions. Did I move when I took that picture and caused that movement?
Yeah.
Or because then, because there are times, especially a couple years in, I got a better camera, right? So I could take 5 pictures at a time. So it would eliminate some of that stuff. Of course, then you start wondering more because then you start getting inside your head.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I did a thing here for a little TV for you guys YouTube series, and I kind of went old school. Went into a very haunted location, and there was a bar. There's a bar in this place, and it was supposed to be very active behind the bar. So I old school hang up a piece of string that you say, "Can you move this?" And I was the only male in this group, other than the photographer who was behind me. And we had a number of audio recorders going too. And sure enough, the string didn't move. Oh, so we go back and we listen to the audio. And I say, you hear me saying, if you're here, you touch a string. Very clearly a male's voice, don't touch a string. It's like, so he's telling all the other dead people, don't play with these guys. Just back off. Don't
do it.
Yeah, so I have some good ones, and I've got in literal conversations back and forth in a house.
I believe it's very possible, and I've got people that swear by them on my team and otherwise, but for me, I just don't hear it. And for the record, the ghost box just drives me absolutely nuts.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I remember having to go through on my team and like trying to answer the questions. I was like, oh geez, man, really? I'm deaf. But I also got in an argument because I was a policeman for a long time, and I'm comfortable in providing you with what I think is evidence, and I can articulate why or how I got it. And then I was running into people saying, well, you can't modify the audio. And I said, I didn't really modify it. I just slowed it down. Well,
Yeah,
that's modifying it. Yeah, but I slowed it down 64% using this software. That's all I did. And this little blip actually comes out as please leave me alone. It's like, you can actually hear it. It's a woman's voice. Please leave me alone.
yeah.
But it only was caught on the audio tape as a bloop. And they're saying, well, no, we can't trust that, because it's like, really? How about you can, trust it. All I did was slow the friggin' thing down.
Here's my question for people, right? If they're timeless, right, and they don't understand time, they don't understand time. So if you say bloop, and it comes out longer, is that because time is different on that dimension or side or whichever way you want to cut that cookie? I mean, it's all the same thing. We're just playing word games, but we leave those conversations for somebody else, because I'm not the articulate person on all that. But it's interesting because, and, there's things that, and is, that, like I said, that ting, ting, ting. Now, did I miss something else in there in that moment? Because all I heard was ting, 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 not like, because everybody hears more than I do. I'm pretty sure. Maybe not everybody, but a wide majority of people hear way better than I do.
Yeah, I found too, we could have 3 people with recorders, and only one of them gets something, or 2 of them get something and one doesn't. And they're all in the same room, all basically sitting in the same place, but only one recorder picks up something. And
now here's my question. Now, this is where I got in trouble with some of my people. 3 people sitting in the room, right? Doing the EVP session, and the one recorder gets it. And when we were running the team, we had mostly the same recorders, so follow that out, right? So it wasn't, but we did have a couple different ones. But this one case in particular, I'm thinking about, that's going to get me in trouble again, I'm sure, if somebody listens to this. 3 recorders. Well, I'm sure they're tired of listening to me talk about stuff like this, so they're probably not listening anymore. 3 recorders, 3 people, same recorders, same room. Comes up on one, right? And I say to the 2 people that didn't show the recorder, that didn't show a bunch of little clips of things. I said, so what did you do to make them not want to talk to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't necessarily the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Or were there 2 males and didn't get anything, and 1 female that did, or vice versa?
No, there was a male and a female, and the female did get it. So it kind of worked out too. It was entertaining, at least for me, because I do.
Because you wind them up and let them go.
I do believe, well, this is hindsight, right? Yeah. Those 2 people may have been more interested in dramatization, overreacting, any number of these little cute things I can say, versus being there for the actual reason the other person was there, just trying to get answers. Right.
We won't get into ghost adventures, but yeah. Yeah. So,
dude, hold on. Hold on. Take 2. Hold on.
Oh yeah, I know people who own properties that they're not allowed back in anymore. Like, you said what about? You heard what? No, it's not right. Anyway, we're talking to Jim Malliard of the Malliard Report. Please go to the website Malliard.com. It's Malliard, because it's French, and that's just the kind of thing he is. No, actually, 1,000 years ago or 200 years ago, France. Hey, actually, you weren't. Let's see, Pittsburgh. No, maybe not. I know there's a big chunk before 1803 that belonged to France, but you're a little further east of that. So,
yeah, it's actually the family came. You know how everybody went west?
Yeah.
Back in the day, some of my family came back east.
Oh, so they may have been over into
yes, they may have been over there, which is just the great irony of life. I've got this great sense of adventure and doing all these weird things, and 100 and some years ago, people came. Everybody else was go west, young man. No, not enough of that. We're just coming back.
One of the things I found about living in the West Coast here and talking to some guys in Oregon who are big into paranormal and investigations. One of the guys pointed out to me, and oh gosh, I can't remember his name now. He was in that TV series Haunted Minds, Ghost Minds or whatever. Anyway, really great guy. And he pointed out that we don't have a lot of old buildings out here because people came out to like make their fortune in the West, planning on moving back home. So they build places out of wood. And maybe the guy who owned the lumber mill built his house out of stone, but everybody else built a wooden shack, and they only last about 100 years. They're gone now. So
if that, because of good quality control.
Yeah. So few and far between, or like gold mines out here, a lot of the old ghost towns burnt down a couple of times.
I was going to say, or were burnt down.
Yeah. Honest, I got gold. No, I don't. Yeah. So out in your area though, you've got stuff that's been around, and you can actually go in and poke around in it. And there is a documentation. Going back to Gettysburg, I allegedly, a couple of psychics had told me this. I brought a 17-year-old kid who died day 2 of the battle home with me to BC because he wanted to see the boats. Frankly, he was more interested in my 17-year-old daughter. Whole other story. But eventually he went back.
Wait, never mind. That must have been how I hear things. You said boats, right?
Boats, yeah. Actually, he was more, to be honest with you, they said he was more fascinated with the refrigerator. And he'd stand. Anyway, so I'm saying, okay, we'll find out what this guy's name is. Because, my God, if you died day 2 of the Battle of Gettysburg, it's going to be written down somewhere. Yeah. Like, they knew every single person who went there, every single person who died. It's the most documented battle in the U.S. It's like, other than the Alamo, freaking, they have everybody there. And nope, they say, well, he doesn't really want to tell you his real name because he enlisted under another name. And it's like, so what's the other name? Well, he doesn't want to tell. It's like, really? Like, this is why people don't trust psychics. So it's like,
I've got a question about this story. And your gentleman, right? He's been there for 60 years, whatever, 150, whatever it was, however, right? Long enough to end up wanting to go to British Columbia.
And then go back.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I mean, at any point in the last, there have been tourists there since 1870, I'm sure.
Since the day after the war.
Coming
for the battle.
Yeah, people have been coming through. Why now?
Why now? And I think it's a decent question. We never broach it, but I'm guessing he does this all the time.
Well, if I had frequent miles, I would too.
But he doesn't leave. He will not leave his friends. He will not, and that's what I'm told. A lot of the dead who still are on the battlefield, they're either still fighting the battle or they will not leave.
That to their company, to their brothers, to their
because they're still there.
The other fun thing about this is, this is going to get you, because obviously if you could go anywhere, right? You go to British Columbia, go to Oregon, go to California, come back, go to Maine, wherever, anywhere but home, right? Because if you go home, I think you probably stay.
But you might if home is still the same. It's like, well, I grew up not too far from here, but it's not the same place I grew up. When I went to look for a house out there, when I moved back, I got transferred back to this province in the Mounties. I went out there to look for a house and went, nah, this isn't the place I grew up. It completely changed. But you're right. Why not go home? But why not go anywhere? Like, but isn't it that they need to kind of click onto somebody to go? But then again, how does he go back?
That's my question. If you could go anywhere, right? Because I'm assuming you could get back to the general area pretty much except for the last year from Gettysburg, if you were looking, right?
Yeah.
Because there's people from all around the United States, especially the eastern seaboard, especially the south, because there's all these people coming up just to kind of do all that stuff. So I think you could get at least closer to home. But even if home looks totally different now, they bulldozed the whole thing. But up on the hill, probably still the family plot. And there's people there that would know you if they're still there, which is a whole nother.
If you're dead, you go to. It's like. Are there ghosts in graveyards? Like, why?
No.
Why would you be a ghost in a graveyard? You can get dead people to talk to you in a graveyard by just reading the names off the tombstone. But I'm pretty sure they're just like showing up going, who are you and why are you at my grave? I was busy. I was in Maui.
Yeah.
And like,
Why are you here? What's your problem here?
yeah, but that's about it. I don't think that,
I don't know you,
that
sir.
are
Go
great.
away. Go away.
So why do you think people, or what do you think happens to people after they die?
That's a good question. I think there's a certain amount of people that do stick around for some unresolved, and I don't necessarily think it's to watch their children grow up or this or that or the other. There's just something that stuck with them, unfinished business. And I'm like I said, it doesn't have to be the sweet business either. There's a lot of people out there who want to stick it to whoever, and they want to do it. They just have that, where you're talking about, that emotional imprint.
Yeah.
And so they stick around, and I think most spirits just kind of go, I don't want to say heaven or hell, but that's kind of where I'm at. Like,
Yeah.
I don't believe that everybody gets to stick around. And I think at some point we'll figure that out before I go. But that's the fantasy that I live.
You and I had the opportunity to interview a fellow who had cool way of looking at the world, Jim Malliard.
Mm-hmm.
After he passed away, I went, oh, that's shitty. And then I kind of smiled to myself and went, but now he knows.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, he's been all his life, he's like, this is what's going on. I know this is happening. And this is, I'm going to research this and write about that. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But also, and then he passes over and goes, damn it. That would have been the best paragraph for the book. But now he can't tell us. Yeah.
I was going to say, when I interviewed Jim, I swear to God, this is how it went. We had a great conversation before the show, a little chat, sound check, all this other stuff. I want to welcome to the program Jim Malliard tonight. Jim, what are you absolutely tired of talking about? Well, Jim, I'm talking about the JFK assassination. I literally went over and just ripped my notes. Yep. I knew that's what he was going to. I figured that's what he was going to say, but I had, I had other stuff prepared. I didn't want to talk about JFK with him, but he sent me a message later and he says, I appreciate the feeder because you were prepared to talk about other things. And
yeah.
I said, yeah, I was hoping that you would say that so I could do that, because if I had to rip up the other notes and get off the JFK notes that I had prepared, it probably would have been a long show.
Yeah, it's good. It's like, I'll get you, this is a lady I would like you to interview, Andrea Perron. Grew up in a very haunted house back from 1970 to 1980. She and her family or siblings, which is what the Conjuring series is based on.
So the name rung a bell, but I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. So Andrea is so my interview with her, none of it was to do with the house. Well, a little bit she brought into the house, but all about her other woo-woo background.
Yeah. And
it got into ETs at one point. So she's going to have me on her show coming up in another month or so. But she said, oh, thank you. You can find the story about my house anywhere, but this stuff nobody ever asks me about. And I said, yeah, because it's kind of stuff that's, I don't know. I've interviewed enough authors about their books. In fact, there was a whole series, and I can't remember the name of the authors now, but I asked them, I was going to interview them. And they wrote a series of books back about 5-6 years ago, all in paranormal and hauntings and stuff. Sent them an email. It was a couple. And the guy sends an email back. We are no longer involved in the paranormal. That was it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, you're surprised how many people that goes through that.
Yeah, that was their thing back then. But I think look what's changed in the last, since you've been doing this and starting your paranormal investigations and things. I started mine like 2012. Things have immensely changed in the public perception of paranormal.
Oh yeah, and as I say, it's more convenient for us to talk about. The players within the arena have changed immensely.
Yeah, and a lot of it, if like God bless them, it seemed like every couple of weeks, a Instagram influencer 20-something girl in California was trying to get a paranormal TV show.
Every one of them, every last one,
every single one, because it seemed like a stepping stone to become famous. Well, honestly, it's like, dude, there's how many podcasts are out there now about everything compared to when you started? It's
it's funny you mentioned that, because I had a guy ask me the other day, what do I need to do to start a podcast? And I said, you could literally, hold on, I'll do this. Literally start it from your phone within the next 5 minutes. Meanwhile, back in the day when I started in late 2010 and then started the Malliard Report in 2011, needed a mixer, needed this, it was a literal legitimate nightmare to pull off just the audio portion of it, let alone, I still haven't even gotten the video, but that's here or there. That's my personal.
And you do yours live too. And I remember when I was doing the live weekends, it was a 3-hour gig, 9 p.m. Pacific to midnight, and which is midnight till 3 in the morning in the East. And the majority of our listeners were in the East. The Eastern Seaboard, that's the majority of the country or the continent. Yeah. But
that's the time for that programming now.
Yeah. And that was Blogspot was it called Blogspot?
Blog Talk.
Blog Talk. And it was a hit and miss, and we got hacked. Guys are hacking into it and talking over us. And we're like, oh, this is not that much fun. And plus, you get an author who's in New York, and you got to get him to stay up talk to 3 hours from midnight till 3. And it was a little.
That's why I love my hour. That's just. I say this, and through the years I've learned I shouldn't say anybody can do an hour. The wide majority of people can do an hour. There are a few people. There are a few exceptions, of course. That's true, if any rule.
Yeah, it's amazing how something like with Jim Mars. He's like, I don't think I can do 3 hours, and 3 hours into it, he's going, I could probably talk for another hour. I said, it goes pretty quick, especially if you're not question answer. We're just talking over a beer kind of thing.
Yeah,
it goes pretty good. Now, what nights are you on?
Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Only night I've stuck to that weekly format. People have pushed and prodded for more. Of course, I push and prod back for less, but
So you're on for an hour Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can all the connections are through Malliard.com, MALLIARD.com.
All your podcast apps and all that other stuff and all the archives, and it's just go there, and if you can't find it, it doesn't exist.
If you can't find it, you're not looking. It's everywhere a podcast can be obtained.
That's the other thing. Back in the day, it was like, find us on iTunes. That was the place. Now it's like I'd have to bring up the list of places it is anymore. Because
I load it on Libsyn or whatever, and it automatically posts it on freaking everything, including Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, like I said, it's just
Spotify.
Now it used to be you'd have to go in there and make the post, and then you'd have to click and copy and paste and share it, and now it's like,
that was easy.
Yeah.
I find it's easy to listen to. I do mine. I try to aim it an hour and 20 minutes. I know it goes over sometimes to 2 hours, but I always plan on, and an hour is a good thing because that's literally driving to and from work in most commutes.
Yeah, that's what I
do it on the way to work, on the way home.
I found the average listening time was 47 minutes, so they're catching most of it. And I think if you discount the people that click off within a few minutes because it's just not what they want to hear. It's probably most people are listening to the hour. So
yeah. So what I do now is I've just started. You're about the fourth, maybe fifth person that I've actually done the video interviews with. The video interview goes to my Patreon account, and unless you're paying $3 a month, you won't see the video interview for about 3 weeks. Then it'll eventually come out to YouTube, but the audio goes out immediately. I release the audio, so everyone out there will hear the audio on all the platforms that you usually.
Aren't you doing that backwards? Maybe you should release the video, because I see we're two good-looking guys, and maybe if they don't want to watch us, they should have to pay for the audio.
That's a good call. Good call. Don't make me show you my face.
Pay to make me go away. Isn't that the joke? Pay to keep your clothes on? The old no.
Yeah, it's like, please, sir, put your clothes back on. You're scaring the fish. So from paranormal, and this is and I'm guessing you kind of did what I did. The more people you talk to in podcasts and in real life about paranormal, and more people you ask questions of, the more questions you have.
Yeah. And
now you got more questions, and you need to find more questions. So you've kind of including your paranormal is just stuff that's not normal.
Yeah. Well, for years I beat the crap out of that word, right? Paranormal, because it would be conspiracy. Well, there's nothing normal about conspiracy. Well, there's nothing normal about Bigfoot or aliens, because then I started playing that, and then it's like I could mix in a little of this, a little of that, and then now it's kind of like I doing all this other stuff, and now the paranormal is kind of that little back end of it. Like, now it's kind of not the focus anymore.
You've kind of grown out of that now. So a lot of you touch on a lot of things that are timely and in the news.
Yeah, I try to stay current, but it's a fine line that I'll explain it to you the way I try to explain it to everybody. I try to stay current, but listenable for a couple years from now. Like, I'm trying to be relevant, and I'm trying also at points there are shows that I go out of my way just to document this moment in time, because I think as the clutter of podcasts, as we were just talking about, develops, there's going to be some that obviously just don't have the wherewithal to do it, because most don't. I mean, you've been around long enough to see all these people that have started 5, 6, 7, 8 shows even, and looking for that home run out the gate. Well, nothing is a home run out the gate unless you. Anyways, I'm not going there. Back to the original point. So there's going to be, at times, there are going to be people out there in probably 5, 6 years looking for specific moments in what was happening and how it was handled, and especially the people in it. So I've been trying to do some of those. I don't want to say time capsules and get all deep and philosophical on you, but I just think, because while you can go out and get CNN clips and all this other stuff, when you get the opportunity to talk to some of these people for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, that's much different than you get that 2 minutes and 45 seconds from CNN. It gives you a little more context and understanding who the person was.
You talked to Roger Stone
4 times.
Okay. I have questions.
Okay. Yeah, I've got answers.
None of which he would probably answer, but they're cop questions.
Well, and I'll tell you this. This is probably on your list. You can cross this one off. Who's your favorite guest? Obviously, I could list a whole bunch off, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to being a guest, what I'm doing now, I always think of Roger, because that guy. Okay, let me tell you. Again, you do a little sound check before, I do as well. So I was doing that with him. I said, Roger, how's the weather in Florida? Because I wanted him to talk for a few seconds so I could actually look and make sure everything was good. Well, Jim, let me tell you, the weather today in Florida is great. Reminds me of the time I was writing whatever book, and just rattled this book promo right into how's the weather today, right? And 45 seconds later, he says, so it's not bad here. And I went, yeah, it's not bad here either. Let's start this recording before, I thought
before I lose something else.
I just missed some good stuff because I was making sure it was right, and it's just like, but it wasn't a forced promo. Obviously it's a fun promo, right? Because he worked it in such an unusual way, but it seems so natural and so.
Because he's a salesman. Yeah.
It just worked. And I think about that because, we've been talking for a while now, and I really haven't done that. Like, I don't get that. I don't have that in me. So I always respect that part of him. Now, do I agree with him politically and all this other stuff? Of course not. There's the things that I just, no. But to see that and to reverse engineer it so I'll ask him questions trying to get a book promo out of him, right? Yeah. And he will work a different story. And then I'll ask the next question. And meanwhile, he'll come back through with that book promo it's fun. It's interesting too, because sometimes you'll just ask a straight question. You'll get a straight answer from people, but trying to be tactical with him, because he doesn't do many podcast interviews, I've noticed. And which is great for me. So I get to experiment because everybody knows where he is politically and this other stuff. So I get to play a little bit because
politically and this other stuff.
This other stuff. I mean, like the funny thing is we share a birthday, right? We're both born on August 27th. So there's that little moment where you get an insight to him personally, because not many people can play that little card. And I did because, well, I had to, because you just get, and that's what I like, especially when I get those bigger level guests on. I like to get to the points where I don't want to say they're off the grid, but you know exactly what I'm saying when I say that. Yeah. They don't have their prepared minute, 30-second answer like they do for all the radio spots they do. Like, they have to actually think and answer the question, not just say, well, in chapter 7, da 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 da.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like those are guys that because that's not my audience, or my audience isn't that content. It's kind of interesting. I find your show interesting because it spreads through a whole bunch of different genres, and and you still ask the questions that I probably want to ask. Except Roger Stone, he probably would have hung up on me by now. So it would be
well, there's that fine line where you push and you pull, and let me tell you, anytime you mention his name, people have an instant reaction to it. Good, bad. There's no indifferent to him. It's either good or bad. So.
Oh yeah. It's interesting. So you also get into conspiracies, which I don't really touch on, and I'll tell you why. I've worked for the federal government. I've worked for the provincial government and city governments. We're a total of about 36 years. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police for 28. Federal government, investigators, major crime, like organized crime, the whole bit. Wiretaps, friggin' airplane surveillance, the whole bit. In fact, it was fun. I was a spotter in a surveillance aircraft, which is kind of cool because we're at 7,000 feet. I had gyro binoculars that could look, 7,000 feet. I could be 3 kilometers away and see what's in your hand as you walk out of a house. Yeah. So it was kind of cool. But only on bad guys, people. Don't freak out. It's like, there's a reason.
I noticed I wasn't freaking.
Yeah, we're only going to follow people because we're supposed to be following them. It's not like, oh, let's pick Bob. But anyway, it was kind of cool. My hearing, it's my phone. Don't. That's all you're ever going to see in my hand. No. See, to me, a conspiracy is one person's conspiracy is another person's policy. Our government agencies have a policy. If we get this information, it goes into file B. Oh, well, why? Well, because it's always gone into file B. Well, are you hiding it from everybody? No, policy says it goes file B. That's it. It's not like, okay, we have to hide this from the general public. No one's ever seen this before. No, everyone's seen stuff like that come in. And I've got asked once on an interview, they said, well, you were in the police for all this time. What are you supposed to do when someone reported a UFO sighting? So there isn't a supposed to. There's actually no policy on that. The file is called Assist General Public. Yep. And you write it up. It goes into the file. It goes into the system where it sits until purge 7 years later. That's it. If, on the other hand, the UFO flew over somewhere, zapped the building and blew it up, okay, there could be some other agencies involved in that.
There might be some more paper.
Well, no, you're keeping it from the public. It's like, no, policy is we just fill out the file and put it there. Well, did you investigate? How?
Yeah, he wasn't there when you got there.
Yeah, I went and looked in the sky, didn't see it. So obviously it was GOA, gone on arrival. Yeah, UFO GOA. But conspiracies to me, and that's where I think of conspiracies. It's a policy. And unless somebody wants to change it, a new person comes in and says, I think there's a better way of doing this, then they change it. So
I'll give you my backstory on conspiracy. I like to see how you, this is a bad example because you obviously don't believe, but how you got to that point of believing that the CIA killed JFK. Like, how do you bridge that information together? Not necessarily because I want to believe that. I just kind of want to dig in and see if the steps make sense to me. Not trying to change my mind, but sometimes, you've done enough of these interviews where somebody says, man, the sky, purple. Why is the sky purple? Man, you don't ask questions like that because the sky is purple. And you go, thanks. But then if the other answer is, well, when I was a child, I drank a lot of purple Kool-Aid and it seems everything has this purple hue now. Well, why did you drink so much purple Kool-Aid? Because it tasted good. Oh, okay. Well, now we understand how we got there backwards. And maybe the sky is purple for you because you did drink too much purple Kool-Aid.
Yeah. You drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. And you like that. You like that analogy, don't you?
Yeah. So I've got in my conspiracy bundle, like other than obviously Majestic 12 killed Kennedy, but the because it's obvious because I read it on a chat group online, and the QAnon people were involved in it too.
As I say, H.W. Bush, I think, the best. Nobody knows his whereabouts that day. Just for the record, that always comes up. My whereabouts were unknown too. Of course, there's a slight problem. I wasn't born yet, but we're just going to leave that out of that. You just clip that out later.
Well, yeah, you ever realize you never saw H.W. Bush and Fidel Castro in the same place at the same time?
Yeah, see, this is where the internet goes wild, right? Because there's all sorts of.
My dad, conspiracy-wise, after my dad was in the Air Force in the Second World War in a bomber bombing the French, actually bombing France, but the Nazis that were there.
Well,
after the war, he came back and he was in the reserves, and he was actually in charge of the unit that would evacuate the area that I live in in the event of a nuclear attack and then reoccupy. So I have this book. It's a restricted book. It was restricted back in the 60s. And you flip through it and it was like, yeah, if your car breaks down, you push the car off the side of the road. If anyone argues, you shoot them. Well, my dad, I didn't know this till years later, into the 80s. My dad actually was given cyanide capsules to give my mother, my sister, and me in the event of the Russians bombing us, because he wasn't supposed to worry. They didn't want him to worry about us. It's like, what? He goes,
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, there's worry about you, and then there's murder you. Yeah, I'm not sure murdering my wife and children solves the worry problem.
Would free my mind up to help.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not sure that. I mean, this is just coming to me now. I haven't had much time to think about it, but gut reaction says I'm not sure that just cleans that up like you'd think.
Yeah, couldn't I just send them out of town right now? Oh yeah, sure, but just in case you don't. Like for disasters here in the Mounted Police, which is a contracted federal agency by small towns and whatever, instead of hiring their own police, would come in. In case of a natural disaster or flood, or if there's an upcoming natural disaster, if they can see it coming, they actually allow us to send our families out of town, and the government will pay for a hotel away from the disaster area, because they feel that we would do a better job knowing our family's safe than having to worry about, oh my God, the flood is also coming into my house. They say, okay, your house is evacuated.
That set of circumstances, that makes sense.
Yeah, but historically, in the 1960s, basically the cyanide capsule was doing the same thing. Oh, you don't have to worry about your family. They're fine. No, they're freaking dead. Yeah, but they would have died anyway in the blast. Okay, then how did I survive? It's bizarre. But, and that's the kind of the bizarre military secrecy crap that I used, I talked to my dad about after the fact, like many years after the fact. And at one point, he was terrified because, like, in the Pacific Northwest here, we'd have B-52 bombers leaving Washington State twice a day and coming back twice a day. You see them fly over as they go up to their fail-safe point, up to Alaska, turn around and come back. And we had an air raid siren that at 3:00 on Wednesdays would go off in my neighborhood just for a test. So that was the time I grew up in. It was the Russians, the whole thing down in Cuba, Cuban Missile Crisis, and my dad running around with putting on a uniform and taking off for a week at a time to go do his secret spy stuff. And that was kind of weird. So, in hindsight, you kind of look back on it and say, yeah, it was a screwed up time and shit was happening. But if what do we do now? Like everything, we don't really have to worry. We can see, we have the capability. The West has capability of seeing that envelope in the guy's hand from a satellite. You don't need the plane at 7,000 feet up and 3 kilometers away. You can get satellites to do that now. So we don't really have to worry too much about stuff, other than the missiles get here a lot quicker than they did back then. But we went off on a tangent. I went off on a tangent.
I was going to say, I was going to say, you went down that rabbit hole. I'll leave that.
But anyway, yeah, conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of this QAnon group?
I think that's been entertaining. And I think it's been it served its purpose, and I'm going to say it like that and say its purpose was to create a how do I say this nicely? I'm just going to say it, James. I'm just going to say this. They created a cult-like following, and there comes a point where that was necessary, and I think we may have seen part of that yesterday.
Yeah. By yesterday, what we're talking about is yesterday was the 6th of January and the Capitol building. But I found that I was going to interview a gentleman who is a professor at a university in somewhere in Rochester, maybe. And he's written a number of books and teaches on, talks about cults and how a cult is developed. And we're going to talk about the belief system of the outspoken Q people and the types of people who bought into that. And it basically mirrors the way a cult leader kind of prepares and sends the crumbs out to members and eventually, creates a cult. So we're going to talk about the cult of Q. And unfortunately, his wife just had a baby and he couldn't do it. He says, I am now up to my ass in babies here. So we'll talk about it. He goes, it's a really good conversation, but I can't have it right now. But that was the closest I was ever going to get to like doing the conspiracy stuff. And I've literally had to remove, because, Facebook only lets you have 5,000 personal friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, I probably have removed close to 300 to 400 in the last 6 months. Because
see, that's how many I have.
Like,
I just gave up on trying to keep people. I just don't accept them anymore. But that's just me.
Don't engage. Yeah, and it's interesting. And I don't know what it's like for you, but because I'm in that spiritual woo-woo kind of side of things, it's amazing how many awakened spiritual people have bought into. I'm going to build a wall around my house, stay inside with a machine gun to keep the others out. Yeah, and you are spiritual? How?
Yeah, well, it got to be too much when people would start typing about things that because I have a personal life too, and there was a time where I'd post about that stuff, and of course I just don't anymore, even though I keep it down, and like I can't honestly remember the last time I posted anything of actual substance that I'm going to look back on and be like, oh, that was cool. Like everything has been related to just a random statement or something show related for a couple of years now. Yeah. And that's, good. And it's sad on one hand, right? Because I remember having social media before where I could send a message, post a message about something with my friends and have a good time. And now I don't want to do that because I don't want to expose them to the potential of nutcases that follow my show, or I don't want to say follow my show, but listen to my show.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. It is that social media, white hat, black hat kind of balance of where, and me as a policeman, we used to get letters from people saying that, so-and-so is doing all this stuff and the Queen is actually doing this and there's people infiltrating my neighborhood, or you get a phone call to go talk to the person and you would take 2 policemen with you. Because you'd get there and the guy would be telling you about how the neighbors would come home and they'd shine lights into his house before they got there. Well, it's because he lived on a cul-de-sac and they'd drive straight at him and the headlights would go into his window. And then they would listen to him through his wall sockets. And he can prove it because he's written it all down. And it's literally in the edges of the newspaper, that white spot, that little clear place. And he'd write it all down and he'd have it and all sorts of documentation on everything the neighbors were doing. So he says, I can prove it's real because I've written it down. Because he grew up perceiving that anything in writing in a book must be real and must be true. So his transferring it, and what was found years later in a training exercise I was on, was that when they hand you that book of all the information, you don't take it away from them. You hold it and give it right back. Because it was in Ontario, there was a policeman went to one of these guys by himself, said, oh, here's all the evidence. And the guy said, oh, this is good. And thought he'd like placate him for a bit by saying, I'm going to take this back to the office and photocopy it and bring it back. And then the guy killed the policeman and then phoned the police saying, yeah, I called, but somebody else came here to try to steal the evidence dressed as a policeman. It's like, no, paranoid schizophrenic people, you can't just do that to them. It's really, really spooky. But now those people are on Twitter, and on the computer and on a phone, and they can communicate with other people with similar challenges. And who knows, if we were to have and this is my Dr. Strangelove moment, if anyone's seen that movie where the doomsday device was a bunch of nuclear bombs the Russians planted around the world because they just couldn't afford to keep up with the US and military spending. So they thought it would be cheaper that way. What if somebody who didn't like Western democracy decided, we're spending billions of dollars trying to keep up with these guys in military. How about we just get a building, an office building, hire a bunch of psychologists and a bunch of computer geeks and send out the crumbs that way? What could possibly happen in a couple of years? Well, so is that a conspiracy? Is that a theory?
We've seen a small drip of what could happen if you get a couple people together, I think. A scale.
Yeah, you need, and there becomes a family, a group. If you get enough people with a cause, their perception, and this comes back into the cult. The cults are big on offering you something, knowledge that no one else may have. You know what? If you join this, you and I will know something, but those people won't. So it's addressing your ego. I've been kind of by myself. I'm a bit of an introvert. I'm off, don't really have a peer group, but now you're inviting me in and giving me something that only we have. Okay, I'm there. Okay. And by the way, it's like you are now around a whole bunch of other people exactly like you. So all of a sudden, everybody becomes relevant. Well, everybody knows that. Well, everybody's relevant to that group of people. It reminds me of I did a talk as a young policeman of a class of high school kids. And one of the kids at the front said, everybody does acid. And all the rest of the kids in their classroom saying, no, they don't. Only you and your friends do. So it became relevant to that girl going, oh, everybody, and we talked about it after, everybody is based on your peer group. If everybody in your peer group, all 5 of you, drink warm beer, then your perception is everybody drinks warm beer. But that's not really true. So it's those people on social media now are going, well, everybody believes that.
Yeah, and that's I've told some people about that. You've got to be very careful who you unfollow, because if you unfollow everybody that posts something that you may not agree with, at the end of the day, all you're going to see is stuff that you agree with. And if they change what they're thinking about what they think they know, or up the level, you're just going to start believing that, because that's all you're going to see. And it's going to get the next 2 years is going to be really interesting, because people have tightened the web down so much for themselves. They're only going to see things they want to see. And the conspiracy about the internet knowing them too well and all this other stuff is going to become really real for them, because that's what they want.
Yeah, and again, because of the way social media is developed to make money, if these are the only subjects you're interested in, and these are the only people you'll hang out with on social media, that's all the information that's going to be attracted to your account.
Yeah, it's fun.
You're just pulling in that stuff. You're right. You need to keep a balance. You need to be walking the line on the fence.
Yeah. So I've got a fun story for you. 6 years ago, I can't remember who the guest was, but this guy sent me this glowing email about how good the show was, right? And I'm like, oh, thanks, right? And I didn't think anything of it. It was kind of weird, because I still don't get that many emails saying this about the shows, but whatever. I don't really care. I don't need that validation. But it was kind of weird that, but I'm like, okay, it does happen from time to time, whatever. And then a week later, I get another email from this guy saying, I pulled the wool over your eyes. I hated your show. You're just And I tried to dox you, and I was going to post all your information in public, and I come to find out that I can't find anything on you. Well, no shit, Holmes. Like, you really think I would name my show the Malliard Report if that wasn't my real last name? I don't have that much creativity to come up with some really fluky last name. No, like, dude. I mean, I sit here, I talk into a microphone. The picture. Obviously, if I was going to project a fake me, I'd pick somebody thin and good looking to increase those ratings. Like there's so many little things that if I was going to do. And they're like, but man, there's no arrest, there's no all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, dude, there are people out there who are actually just good people, not screwballs.
Yeah,
it's funny to me. Like,
yeah, so I go by James Tyson. Tyson's my father's middle name because my real last name is Brown,
and that doesn't work.
There's a lot of other James Browns out there. So
I'm picking one right now from. We had a little chat before you started recording about the Cleveland Browns, and there's a famous football player with that name.
James Brown, yeah. And all through school, it was like number 32, and he was actually a better lacrosse player than he was football player. Because I know that because I had to grow up with all the James Browns in the world's data coming into me.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And you go into
so let's be correct. You got none of the skill. You got none of the football skills, none of the lacrosse skills, none of the music.
Can't dance. Can't dance, can't sing.
Skills, probably.
No.
You drew the short straw.
Yeah, I'm not it. My parents had absolutely no imagination when it came to names. Just a white angle.
And the funny thing is, right?
Brown.
And see, I thought Malliard, was all this different. Listen to this. So I added this guy, and we started talking, and he sent me a message one day, totally weird to me. Like, I can't remember what it was. And then I got a message a few minutes later from, hey, wrong Jim. And I went, that's weird, but whatever. Jim's the common first name, right?
Yep.
So I opened his friends list up, and he's got 2 Jim Mallards on his friends list. And I went, what a parallel universe. Like, I thought I was unique there for the longest time. And then there's this guy that intersects, like the universe, I'm like,
yeah. So
I messaged him about it. And he's like, oh, you went to school with him back in the day. And it didn't register to him until I pointed it out. And he's like, well, obviously that's probably why I sent you the wrong, the message to the wrong one, because there's 2 of you. And I'm like, dude, like, I thought I was the one, and now my whole world has just ended. Thanks.
Yeah. In my second grade, there were 6 Jims. 3 of us were Jim Brown. So I was Jimmy. There was a Jamie, James, Jim, James, Jimmy, all of the variables, and the other 2 kids had to get punted to another class. It's like,
I was going to say, how many kids are in the class? I mean,
it's like, what are the odds? Oh, no, fun. It was just that time, now they name everybody Courtney or Brittany or Buffy or whatever, and you get 10 Brittany's or Buffy's in your class. Back then.
Or some weird spelling then. I mean, yeah. I've seen some weird spellings. No, they just make my head hurt.
Yeah, I
barely could spell Alice.
I went to Starbucks, and they say, what's your name? Jim. And they go, how do you spell that? It's like, Gym. Like, what do you think? Like, yeah, okay, mister. Jim Malliard, the Malliard Report, Malliard, Malliard. It is James Malliard in the MalliardReport.com.
Yeah, give it the hard pronunciation for them.
Yes, the Malliard. Malliard Report there, eh? Oh, that's way French Canadian. His podcast is 9 p.m. Tuesday nights. 9 p.m. Eastern time every Tuesday night. For the links, go to Malliard.com. You will find him. And it's interesting because I like that you have a box full of question marks that continues to grow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if I've got any answers yet. Almost 10 years in. Like, I don't know if there's, well, I guess there's, and here I am. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this. Like, I don't want to talk about Flat Earth again, but I'm going to. Right? Like, like, at one time I ruled that out completely, and then I talked to a guy, and I'm like, now that I'm kind of into it, this doesn't change my beliefs. I believe we're around the world. But I just love the fascination with, this comes back to that line of questions, right? How did you get to this point of believing something that is so different than what I believe? And maybe, I don't think anybody's ever going to convince me, just like, a bunch of other things. But the exercise of going through that is fun for me. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah, it's a repartee, it's the dueling kind of like, okay.
In a conversational way, and I mean, we're going to both say at the end of the day that was entertaining and good and fun. And did you learn something? Yeah. Did you and because I think it's too often, if you listen to a flat Earth podcast, I love picking on that topic, and you have flat Earth guests on all the time, you kind of start taking it for granted. Like you don't understand anymore. It's just kind of feeling, it goes back to that conversation we were just having about getting lost in your own stuff.
Yeah.
And I think so at least for me, it keeps me going, because if I had to talk the same thing every week, I'd probably be out of business.
Well, that's the interesting part that I have. I kind of branched from the paranormal ghost hunting stuff into psychic thing. And the paranormal team that I was on had a psychic. And instead of walking into a 20-room hotel trying to figure out where the ghost is, the psychic would walk in and say, okay, room 10. Yeah. It was just like, okay, we can cut through all the crap. We'll just go there. And then I started hanging out with a lot of psychics, and I started interviewing some that were full of crap and absolutely.
I was going to say, once you talk to two of them, then you start to learn that, well, one says room 10, the other one says out in the parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah. If you get three people to say room 10, hang out with those three. Then I had that episode when I was live. It was 2 mediums and a large, and people could phone in and they would get readings. And that really opened my eyes as to how the hell would you know that? The guy's like in Wisconsin, and you've just completely totally described his dad and what he was wearing and what the guy's name was. And you're on this coast. And she said, I don't know. It's like, I'm psychic. Duh. So compared to her and the Joanna, who's a medium back then, she would come on, and then compared to some other people I interviewed who were just full of crap.
Yeah. You're going to make me tell this story, James. You're just going to do this.
Excellent.
5-6 years ago, whenever it was, this medium. Now, see, I normally don't do pre-show interviews with people just because I just don't like that, because I feel if I've talked to the person and got all my questions kind of started to answered, I have to then bring that all back up, and I get bored with it, so to speak.
Yeah, because you've heard it already. Yeah.
I've heard it already, so I just want to keep going. And I find that I have problems with that with somebody, like when I do prep for an interview. Like I know the answer to this first question, but if I don't ask it, my next question doesn't make any sense to anybody besides the nerds into this. So, but anyways, so this medium's like, Jim, let me do a reading for you before the show, so that way you can, swear how good my skills are. I'm like, I don't do readings first and foremost. Like, I've never had one. And she's like, well, we've got to change that. I'm like, no, we really don't. She's like, yeah, we do. I'm like, okay. After, you go back and forth long enough. Okay, fine. 4:00 Wednesday, call me. Right. So I'm sitting in my studio like I am. Well, this wasn't it, but like I am now. And I'm like, okay, how are you doing? And we start through this conversation. She starts telling me all these things. And I had my wife, I had it on the speakers, not on my headphones, right? Because I was just kind of, and she's listening to this lady, and I look up, and my wife is just shaking her head, and she is about ready to tell this lady off because she is so wrong. And let me tell you, there's I just told you I'm from Western Pennsylvania, right? That's not hard to find. It's in my bio. It's all it's everywhere. How's Kentucky today? I wouldn't know. Well, yes, I think you will. What do you think? And I'm like, no, just point after. I mean, I think I let her go 3 points. Like, how's Kentucky? She tried to mention some things about my kids. And when she mentioned the number, she more than, 3 times the number of kids I had. So, I mean, I know they have big energy and all this stuff, but to be that wrong, I mean, unless there's some that I just don't know about. Of course, if I live in Kentucky, I guess I could have a whole alternate universe going on that I just don't know about. And then there was something about, there was something else. Oh, that I should sign the contract on my desk. The deal that I had on my desk. The radio deal I have on my desk.
Okay.
Which one? The one on your desk. I'm looking at my desk and I've got a notebook and, old show notes and scrap papers, like I'm sure you look at your desk and you're seeing it, the old empty drink cups, some stuff from a publisher, a couple index cards that I scribble notes on, like things that I need to do like around the house that come to my mind while I'm doing the show, notebook where I do my show notes. Got a candle over there that I normally write when I do paranormal stuff, but I didn't light it tonight, so I probably missed a good story somewhere in there because I didn't have the magic going. And, like my desk is still this cluttered mess, right? But there's no contract, there's no nothing. And there's never, like, I don't leave those types of things sit. Like, if I'm going to sign it, it's signed and back. And if I'm not going to even get to that point, right? Like, I'm just that kind of yes, no, let's go, or let's not go. I don't sleep on too many things. So when she tells me I'm like, well, tell me more about this contract. And she's like, oh yeah, big syndication deal and all this other stuff. And I'm like, whoa, you need to stop because this is so far from true. Like, you're probably hoping there's a big syndication contract on my desk. So when you come on my show,
yeah,
you want to be the first guest on this. But
that is like, it's almost embarrassing now when I get psychics who I was at a conference. Oh, it was actually the international or the UFO Congress. There was a psychic from Phoenix there, and she walked up to me and she said, "Oh, you should have me on your show." And it's like, really? I have no idea who you are. Oh, I'm such and such a psychic of Phoenix. And I checked with some friends and they said, yeah, you don't want to talk to her. And you usually don't want to come up when usually the ones that I want to talk to are the ones that don't want to talk to you. And just like, I'm good. But here's, I want you to answer this truthfully. Okay. Put your truth hat on.
Yeah.
I'm pretending I'm a psychic. Jim, there's a male who passed in your life of something in the chest, correct?
Yeah. And man, I did this to a person one time after they told me the psychic reading and they told me what they paid for it. And I did what you're doing.
The cold reading? Yeah. Because 70% of males will die of something in their chest.
Well, most people,
and the classic is they'll stand in a group. Oh, I have a male coming through. He's passed of something on his chest. Who could that be? And like 5 hands will go up and they'll just go, okay, you, he wants to let you know that he's in a good place. We all want to hear that.
Or you skipped a few steps in there. You've got a father figure, used to smoke, worked with his hands. You've
got something that belongs to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause we all have something that belongs to some dead relative.
Yeah.
But that is a classic cold reading. Like, yeah, for freezing cold. Yeah, so you got to be careful. And that, unfortunately, that Teresa Caputo, who's the Long Island medium, she got stained with that kind of thing because she was doing readings on television where it looked like she just left the house, walked down the street, and boom, did a reading on somebody. When in real fact, they had pre-set up these meetings. She had meditated. She wasn't going in. She's not like her brain's, that part of her head's not turned on constantly to walk down the street, but it doesn't make for good TV. So they did this little thing. So she got like bizarre stalkers saying that she was real anti-psychic people and religious hooligans were out to cut her down because
religious hooligans are out to get everybody.
Yeah. That's kind of fun. We had that in the Oregon Ghost Conference here. We were picketed by a church that was across the street from it. And one argument, not an argument. I get in this discussion because I'm that way inclined to stick my foot in it. And we were talking.
The same discussion I have. Let's go for it.
Yeah, we had the discussion about smudging. Oh my God!
Different discussion that I have than people.
That's a pagan, blah blah blah. And I said, what did the 3 wise men bring to baby Jesus? Oh, frankincense, myrrh, and gold. 2 of those are for smudging. No. So yeah, back then they were. Have you ever been to a Catholic mass and seen the guy going like this with the thing, the smoke in front of the priest walking? Why are they doing that? Well, it's not right. In Jewish ceremony, in the Jewish church, they do that. In synagogues, they'll do that too. And they're like, oh, well, that's all. Just go away.
Here's my classic conversation for those people. File this one away for you because this gets fun. So, as a ghost hunter, I hear demons, right? That's what you're telling me.
Yeah.
But you pray and hear God. You can tell the difference how?
Well, one's taller.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like
it's
because are you sure you're not hearing the demons and I'm not hearing God? Because I'm not. But just be sure what you know.
Yeah, I got into a debate. Actually, I brought it up with one of the last people I interviewed here. It was she's written a lot of books on the seance and paranormal teams. Yeah, we would never do a seance. Like that's woo-woo stuff. And I said, really? But you will sit around on the floor asking a ghost to come and talk to you. What's the difference? Well, we're not at a table. It's a friggin' seance.
Tables are hard props to bring with you.
Yeah. Yeah, please, if there's somebody in here, knock on the wall. Yeah, that's a seance, you dummy.
I
we just
heard
call
it.
it different.
Somebody there.
I've heard.
I heard that somebody was there.
That's my mom. She wants us
slamming your hands into the basket.
Oh, hey, you ever played with a Ouija board?
I have, and you ready for this? There's two things here. It didn't work for me, which is fun, and I hate to spell, so I feel totally indifferent to it anyway. So if you're gonna ask how I feel about it, it's not my cup of tea because I just hate to spell. So if you want to give me a message, you better just have it spelled out and ready for me to read.
Yeah, it's Ouijas and dyslexics. We don't get along with them that well.
So it's. Do I believe it's opening some sort of portal to the other side? That but your EVP session does the same thing. But that's
and that's what some people use it in lieu of EVPs. Or there's a guy who just actually sent me a Happy New Year notice. He lives on a homestead, an old farm homestead out in northern Minnesota, I think. And he talks to the dead people in his house through the Ouija board. And I've always been like told, yeah, you shouldn't go near that, James. And I was like, okay, I'll stay away from that. And I was interviewing Karen Dahlman, who's like, you know who I mean, Karen?
Yeah, I've had her on.
Oh, sweet. So she's telling me, it's all about intent. As long as your intent is pure.
Yeah. And
you come in and you're positive, then nothing negative is going to come through. So she's telling me this, and this is on a live show. And I'm listening to her, and as I'm listening, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'll give it a shot. Who do I know has got a Ouija board? And as she's still talking, I get grabbed by my collar, and I get pulled back in my chair. And at the time, I was set up in an office area, like at the end of my bedroom, with the door shut, and I thought my kid had come in, grabbed my coat, and pulled me back. Yeah. And I was like, I turned around, and there's nobody there. So I was like, again, I checked with this psychic friend and I who like clear dead people out of houses, said, what was that about? And she laughed and said, it was your dad who had passed away years ago. He said, he basically came through and says, no, you're not going to be playing with a Ouija board, because I probably don't have the focus to say, okay, all love, light, I'm going to be positive. Yeah. Oh crap, maybe I left the door open. So my dad was going, nah, no. Don't listen to Karen at this time. Actually, it was the same conversation I was having with Karen, and I had an orb, like it was a blue orb the size of a golf ball going past over top of the keyboard of the computer as I'm talking to her. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on today? And so that's my Karen interview, or one of my Karen interviews I had. But she's a very cool lady. Love her a lot.
Yeah, she's a great person. I've enjoyed. I've had her on twice, and it's probably been too long. I probably need to do it again. But
yeah, I was thinking that today. Sorry, she's got a some kind of live, or one of the like COVID paranormal conferencings coming up in the next few days here, maybe on the weekend. She's got something. If people are looking for her, go Google Karen H. Dahlman. Karen H? Karen A. Karen A. Dahlman, and Ouija boards. She's also the one who taught me how to say Ouija and not Ouija.
I still say
when she's not around, let's call it a Ouija board, which is good. So who do you have coming up on Tuesday?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think I have anybody scheduled yet, which is because I've been trying to stay a little bit more current. There was a time that like 6 months out, I'd know, like I'd be like, oh yeah, in August I have da 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 da. Now it's kind of like, I don't know. And there are times that I get some people that are just guests that you just have to book because of their schedule. You have to say, yeah, I'll do you whenever. And then there's sometimes you just kind of float a little bit and see where the world takes me. And I think I haven't looked, but I think that's where I'm at this week. And that's okay because there's a lot going on in the world. So finding somebody to talk about some of this stuff is going to be a little easy.
Yeah. Getting kind of first week of January 2021. Yeah, there's some stuff going on.
Yeah. I think I need to talk about the Kanye West and Kim Kardashian divorce. I think is where I'm going to.
Yeah, that's on the top of my list of things that are important to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you travel around? Do you ever do the conferences and stuff too, or you kind of lock down because family and kids?
I don't do the conferences. I actually a couple years ago I visited one in Erie, the Live Paranormal, whatever it was, and there were so many people there who knew who I was, which blew my mind because I mean, I'm not that I'm not out there, but there was a number of people who knew who I was when I walked in the room.
That's
and
cool.
You'll know this name, who walked up to me and quacked at me as he walked by. And that was John Tinney.
Oh, really?
And let me tell you, and I looked at him and he just started laughing. And I had him on my show before, right? But that doesn't mean anything because again, we're just on the phone talking. And when he did that, so I finished talking to these people and then make my way to where he was setting up. And there was this big, these big banquet rooms, right? And there was people out in the hall where he walked by me originally, right? And they all kind of caught it and figured out, the star of this event knows who this person is. Maybe I need to pay a little more attention to him. So I walk in, I walk up to Tinney, and so I have my back. Well, he has his back to the room because of how I came around his table and started talking to him. And I'm seeing all these people in this room trying to figure out who I am because I have his full attention. Like we're up there for probably 25 minutes just having this random conversation about, just fun stuff. We're just up there laughing and cutting up. And you could tell there's some people in this room that are uncomfortable because they don't get that kind of time from him.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that from
him back on. I need to have him back on. See, okay, so we're 5 guests in right now. See, this is great.
See, it's people I've never had on seem to pick me, like George Norrie, Travis Walton, Jeremy Corbelli, did I say Corbelli?
Yeah,
Jeremy Corbell. Yeah, just from basically hanging out and having beers at conferences.
Yeah,
and I called I just said his name. Travis Walton and Ginger once. Didn't go over well because he's got red hair and it's like, okay, dude, calm down. But yeah, they're fun. They're actually kind of fun. And I always want to say Bob or Tom Gimlin, Patterson Gimlin films, like the Bigfoot.
It's a bell, but I don't.
Yeah, Tom's a good guy. He's 84, 85 years old now, but yeah, he's a really cool guy to talk to.
Most people are, again, coming back to that thing I mentioned a little bit ago about how most people can do an hour. Most people are pretty good to talk to.
Yeah. And when you're offering them an hour up, like I did an interview with young lady, Akiana Krimeric, who
easy for you.
At the age of 8 painted a picture. It was called The Prince of Peace. It was a picture painting of Jesus. When she painted, she's a genius in oil painting and in poetry. Kind of must
be nice. I mean, neither of us got either skill, so I mean,
no. But she's another one that says, I don't think I can talk for 3 hours. The 3.5 hours she's going, I can talk for another hour and a half. But to get through her people, talk to her for more than an hour, some are saying, she'll talk to you for only half an hour. I said, tell her it's me. It wouldn't matter. I said, no, because we actually talked about coming back on again afterwards. And now I got to go through her dad and her brother, and because does really well money wise. So she's a little harder to reach now, but
yeah. Most people are fun.
It's getting through that. It's like trying to talk to Dan Aykroyd.
I've had
long conversations with Dan Aykroyd, like sitting at a table or actually sitting on a bench in LA, just shooting the crap. But if I wanted to talk to him for an interview, the hoops you got to jump to get through his publicist. And it's like, I learned, and this is what I learned from Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio years ago. If you get a hold of a publicist and they say, how many people listen to your podcast, and we want to see your numbers before we allow our guests to come on, just hang up on them, move on. It's not worth it.
It's never enough for them. Yeah, it's never enough for them.
Yeah, nothing will be enough. And it's like, if that's what's important to them, they don't really want to talk about what they have. So, and that's why I talked to a lot of people. My last interview was somebody who's kind of developed psychic abilities and things over the last few years. And I think she's got something like 150 followers on Instagram, or like some small amount. Like she's not a 180,000 followers in social media kind of. She just had an interesting story.
Yeah, I was gonna say some of those people are way better than the people who are quote unquote professionals at whatever, authors or whatever, the pilot end people. Some of the best interviews are people that honestly you look at it and go, yeah, I'm interested, but okay, we're hoping here, right? And then you're like, hey, we got to do this again. Like at the end, like I'm not done yet. And they can tell a much better story than the person who's, out there really doing
a book or something. Yeah. And the other thing too is that they're a lot of times a lot more thankful, and they also haven't told the story 1,000 times in the month. Yeah.
That's the word. When coming back to that radio answer, you can tell when it's, and that's why especially the bigger people, you have to ask, so tell me about the book, and then you have to ask the couple questions. But there comes that point where grinding gears over here where I just take it and jerk it because I don't want to sit here and talk about this book for an hour.
Yeah. And that's what's fun about Andrea Perrone. She was like, we mentioned her book, then off on a whole bunch of other woo-woo stuff.
And I think, honestly, maybe this is just me being naive to the world, but if the person comes on and is open and honest and tells their story compared to selling the book sells better. But that's just, I have no substantial data to prove that, but I believe that works. Yeah.
Tom Dongo was a good one for that too. Tom, you get talking. Have you ever interviewed Tom?
No.
Prolific author out of Northern Arizona, outside of Sedona. He used to take people on UFO. Actually, back in the 70s, him and his friends used to chase UFOs, communicating by CB radio. Written a number of books on it, all the sightings up there. He's a contactee. It's a really interesting guy. But you get him talking and you're off friggin' on stuff that he hasn't written about. He'll every so often go, I've never told anybody this, but, and it's true. He's like, all of a sudden, because he's in his, I can't remember, late 60s, early 70s, maybe. Hopefully not, Tom, if you're only 50, sorry about that. But it's like you tweaked a memory and all of a sudden, he's off. And later he'll go, oh man, I've never told anybody about that. I haven't even had that in a book. Maybe I should write that down and put that in my next book. Those are the guys that are fun. You're a really good writer, but let's just have a conversation, see where it goes. Have a beer.
Yeah, a good writer doesn't make you a good talk guest.
Yeah. I've interviewed some interesting writers that because I'm rather chatty, as you can tell. You go back over the interview and talk for 5 minutes.
Just in all fairness, just because you're a good talker doesn't make you a good writer.
Unfortunately not. That's why haven't started the book I was supposed to write in 2014.
As I say, where's it at? Well, this one's blank. This isn't it anymore, but this is as far as the book's got. It's an index card. No.
Yeah. Stuff to write about. Oh, and I need to pick up milk and bread and
it's bullet points, but I'm sure I'll take some time and develop these 4 bullet points into a list of maybe 12 bullet points, and then 12 will become 24, and maybe someday I'll have a book.
I was told, well, you have to hire just a ghostwriter. And I said, yeah, okay. Do you have any names? And they said, here, yeah, these are their names. And I went, so it's going to cost me $30,000 to write a book about me, who the only people who would be interested are people in my family. And that's only to placate me, kind of thing. It's like I no, I think I get a job as a ghostwriter.
I was going to say, you spoiled my joke in there. I'm gonna write my paranormal book when I find my ghostwriter.
Good one. That's good. Maybe it's already been written. You just can't see it.
Yeah, it flew off the shelf. Oh.
Yeah, write an audiobook. Actually, you had a thing on Amazon where I could go. There was a blog there. I could.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still up there?
It might be. I don't know. Amazon changed some of how they're routing things. I don't know if it's still is or not.
Okay, because that was one of those. So
I know they've started. Yeah, they've started into their pod. I don't know. Like I said, they've changed so much, and it's hard to keep up with Amazon and everybody else. But it was good there for a while. Yeah,
that'd be kind of fun. It's just another platform to get a hold of you on. Which, honestly, people, if you just Google, just go to his website, Malliard.com.
I was gonna say, if you type in Malliard, you'll find it, no matter if it's and
Doc or not.
Yeah, it's like trying to keep track of, and I don't really care where you listen, if it's iTunes or Spotify or what difference does it make? It doesn't make any difference to me. It's not like one of them pays me more. None of them pay me, so what difference where you listen?
Yeah, go to the Google net and even just
you can listen right there. You can listen right off Google search pages anymore, which just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's going to be on anyway. It's on your phone. Download it, listen to it on the way to and from work. Lots of fun. Yeah. Jim Malliard, thank you for dropping by today. I really appreciate that. It was nice talking to you finally.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we've beat it around enough, and now we actually had a conversation that was actually entertaining.
Yeah, well, we think it's entertaining.
Well,
we'll see if my listener/viewer does too.
No, we're the only two that matter in this conversation.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's because we were telling secret stuff. Secret stuff is.
Well, we've got a whole bunch of secret stuff we could probably talk about. What is that? The bonus feature? Yeah,
that'll be the next interview. That's one. That's the talk you're going to give at the next conference you don't go to. So. Yeah. All right, brother. You take care of yourself, and thanks again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
That's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out. From the mountain.